Now, I've never been a big fan of Mother's Day, actually. When I was a child, I approached it with dread, knowing that I hadn't saved enough money to buy anything nice for my mother like all my friends were buying for their mothers, and that if I asked my mother what she wanted, she would simply suggest something cheap like a spatula. "That's exactly what I need," she'd say with an earnestness that allowed me to believe it. But really, I knew better. When I became a mother myself, especially after feminism began questioning some of our traditions, I began to view Mother's Day not only as a huge marketing campaign for Hallmark and other merchants, but also as a cheap trick to get mothers to feel appreciated for one day so that we might forget how unappreciated we felt the other 364 days of the year. At some point, I had learned about the very first Mother's Day on June 2nd in 1872, when Julia Ward Howe led a Mother's Day anti-war observance in New York City, at which she read a Mother's Day proclamation calling on all women to denounce war. I also learned that the precursor to our current Mother's Day was begun by Anna Jarvis following the death of her mother on May 9, 1905. Jarvis went on to campaign to establish Mother's Day as a national holiday. 5 years later, Congress passed a law designating the second Sunday in May as Mother's Day, and President Woodrow Wilson issued a proclamation declaring the first National Mother's Day as a day for American citizens to show the flag in honor of those mothers whose sons had died in war. All of this might have been lovely had the idea not almost immediately gone the way of commercialization. Apparently, in less than a decade after Jarvis's first commemoration, the merchandising of it had become so prevalent that Jarvis herself said she wished she'd never started it. She hated Mother's Day cards, contending that they were a lazy replacement for writing a real note. I shudder to think what she would say today about e-cards, which I use a lot. In 1948, Jarvis was even arrested for disturbing the peace while protesting the holiday's commercialization. And that's how I came to feel about Mother's Day, too. It should never have been started, I thought. Sometime during my seminary days, I declared a war on it and told my children not to bother getting me anything or doing anything special for me on that day. And so they didn't. But over the years, I've softened a bit. For one thing, I got tired of hearing friends tell me what wonderful things their children had done for them on Mother's Day while I sat home alone. But I also realized that it was a perfect excuse to spend some time with my kids and eventually my grandkids. I can pretty much count on a lunch or brunch or dinner now every Mother's Day, combined, of course, with honoring my daughter as a mother. But I still deplore the commercialization of it. And I refuse, frankly, to treat Mother's Day as some kind of Unitarian Universalist high holy day. I have warned the worship committee of every congregation I've served that they should not expect a service automatically related to Mother's Day every year if I'm in the pulpit. One year, early in my ministry, I delivered a sermon on abortion on Mother's Day. You know, the right to choose to be a mother or not to be a mother. However, it was early in my ministry, and I would certainly not suggest to any young ministers today that they do that. It was not well received. But You could have been listening this morning to a sermon on racism in America or the importance of prayer in our lives, nothing related to Mother's Day, had it not been for the number of jokes that I've begun noticing over the past couple of years directed at mothers and mothers-in-law. Maybe I'd simply become acclimated to them over the years, but I truly hadn't noticed how many there were for a long time. I'd come to really believe that we'd gotten past the stereotyping moms as overbearing, simple-minded, and/or creators of guilt, or mothers-in-law as judgmental, caustic, and just downright evil. Yet I've been noticing more and more comics, especially men, making jokes, for example, about their mother phoning them over and over for no good reason, except to make them feel guilty. On one of my favorite NPR shows, Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, the message that Carl Siegel was supposedly going to leave on the game show winner's home answering machine one week in honor of Mother's Day was, "Hello, this is your mother. I can't answer the phone right now because I've just died of shock that you've called." Funny, I know. But if there are really so many moms complaining about their adult children not calling them, that this can be a common joke, then maybe adult children ought to start calling their moms more often. It's for all of us. Yes. It's not just men making the jokes, of course, though it's probably most often the male writers of comedy shows. On one TV show a while back, a young woman refers to her mother-in-law by saying, "Oh, she's in Arizona," or on the phone, gently telling us how to live our lives. Of course, mothers and mothers-in-law aren't only joked about. Many programs many of the dramas on television I've seen at some point have the mother of a main character visit, and she's always either demeaning to the character or meddling in their life, is alcoholic or mentally ill. I don't know when the last time was that I saw a mother or a mother-in-law depicted as someone that I'd want to spend time with. And so I wonder, is this how it's always been? And for some reason, I had just stopped paying attention? Or is it some kind of new backlash? And if so, against what? Is it part of the more serious attack on women that we're seeing in the political attempts to control women's health care and our ability to make our own choices about that care? Or is it that which is causing me to flinch more when I hear these jokes against mothers and mothers-in-law, another form of discounting and disempowering women? All I ever wanted to be when I was growing up was a mom. I used to imagine finding an abandoned baby on our doorstep and my parents allowing me to be the primary caregiver. But when I finally did have a child of my own, I learned how incredibly challenging it is, and that no one, not even Dr. Spock, could really tell me how to do it. I was overwhelmed with my first child, having just turned 21 the week before she was born. My husband was a full-time student with a full-time job as a busboy at night, and with several years of grad school ahead. We were very poor and very stressed out, and I was simply too young to be a mom. I'd had no idea how difficult it would be. By the time I gave birth to our son 7.5 years later, we were better off financially and could afford for me to stop working and to be a stay-at-home mom. And I did that for a while and was a much better mother to him than I had been to my daughter. But finally, I returned to work in an office part-time as I just wasn't cut out to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. A year after our son was born, my husband and I separated, and I got to find out what it's like to be a single mother, working outside the home full-time and juggling that with picking up the kids from school, childcare, etc. Again, a huge challenge. So like many of you here, I have experienced being a married mom with a paid job outside the home, being a stay-at-home mom, and being a single mom with a full-time job outside the home. All of them carry their own challenges. My mother was always a stay-at-home mom with 5 children. Twice, she hired a cleaning woman to help clean the large 6-bedroom, 5.5-bathroom house that she and Dad raised us in, and each time it lasted just a few months before Dad would decide that we couldn't afford it. And so Mom would go back to doing all of the cleaning, laundry, and cooking while raising 5 children pretty much on her own. And then in her spare time, she took on leadership roles at her church and in the diocese and walked the neighborhood collecting dollars for Democrats when that was allowed. She was actually not a stay-at-home mom. She just wasn't paid for all the outside work that she was doing, much like some of you here in this fellowship. Yet when I think back on how my siblings and I treated our mother, I am reminded of all the jokes we made about her, all the ways in which we didn't take her seriously. It wasn't just affectionate jokes or pranks that we did, those she usually appreciated for their cleverness and humor. No, it was jokes we made, usually behind her back, but sometimes even in her presence, that were an undermining of her strength, intelligence, and wisdom that we just didn't seem to get. And for that, I feel sorry. It doesn't seem really much different from the jokes I hear from comics on the radio and television about their mothers and their mothers-in-law. And so on this Mother's Day, I wish I could turn some of those jokes into thank yous. Like the laughing my siblings and I did when we learned that she had been appointed to the Human Sexuality Commission of the Los Angeles Episcopal Diocese to explore the ordination of gay and lesbian aspirants to the priesthood. I remember us saying to one another in disbelief, "They've asked Mom to be on the Sexuality Commission? Don't they know how naive she is about sex? Don't they know how many times we have to explain jokes to her?" But she was the perfect person to be on that commission because she came to it with humility and yes, even a naivete that kept her open to new ideas and new relationships, even if they made her uncomfortable. She learned everything she could and became a strong supporter of civil rights for bisexual, gay, lesbian, and transgender people. Almost until the day she died at age 94, she could be heard arguing these rights with other residents at the nursing home. It was truly inspiring. The fact that the Episcopal Church has many gay and lesbian priests today, at least a couple of openly gay bishops and transgender deacons, is in thanks to my mother and the few others courageous enough back then to take those steps. I would want to say thank you to her for that. All those times I rolled my eyes as my mom lectured me and my friends about the need for honesty. "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive," she would recite. And I would cringe and think to myself, "Oh my God, she's not going to say that again, is she?" I'd look at my friends and I would roll my eyes with a smirk just so they would know that I was properly embarrassed. But in fact, honesty has become one of my deepest values. I've taught it to my children and now to my grandchildren as well. And when I look back on my life to see where I got that insistence for honesty, it is only my mother to whom I can point. And so I would want to say thank you to her for that. I wish my Sibs and I hadn't laughed after one of her birthday parties when Dad had proudly presented a cake with the peace symbol on it, and Mom and her friends had yelled, "Yay, peace!" My siblings and I thought it sounded silly or shallow or who knows what, and we just joked about it afterwards. But we were wrong, because Mom was our role model for activism. She was the one who taught us that to be Christian meant caring for the poor and the oppressed, speaking out for the voiceless, demanding a safe and peaceful world. Eventually, she would fully support my moving away from Christianity into the broader faith of Unitarian Universalism, in large part because she had come to admire so many UUs who worked alongside her in various peace and justice endeavors. In fact, she knew our executive director, Ken Brown, before I did. And she co-founded the Interfaith Peace Ministry of Orange County, which brought together many different faith communities in their common quest for peace. It is because of my mother that I and my 4 siblings are so committed to that vision as well. And so I would want to say thank you to her for that. What is it that you would thank your mother for? What actions, once seen in a negative light by you, do you now see as a gift, as a blessing of light in which you now dance? There are numerous other things for which I could thank my mother if I had the chance. But I also don't think that she ever needed specific thank yous from us, because she knew deep down how much we kids loved and respected her. She had too much humility to acknowledge this, but my siblings and I all now know that we dance in her light. My mother was not perfect. No one's mother is. None of us who are mothers really knows how to do it. We all fail our visions over and over and over again. And so, ultimately, we must be able to laugh not at worn-out stereotypes, but at our own foibles with tenderness and joy and amazement. We must be able to laugh and to forgive. And so, in the words of Victoria Weinstein, on this day, let us honor all who have mothered us, who from somewhere in their being have freely and wholeheartedly given life and sustenance and vision to us. Amen. Now, would you say with me the words for extinguishing our chalice that are in your order of service? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We are the Conejo Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our mission is to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion. Like us on Facebook, check out our website at CVUUF.org, or come visit us. See you soon!